You still see the flags everywhere. The stark black background with the iconic silhouette of a Vietnam prisoner of war, and the words, "You are not forgotten." Welcome to the Beyond Survival podcast, preserving the voices, stories, and legacies of Vietnam POWs. Here's your host, Susan Page Coffey.
Thank you for joining us. My late husband, Jerry Coffey, was a Vietnam POW and held for 7 years. Over 7 years, he would say. 7 years and 9 days. He came home after all those years, convinced that we human beings cannot just stay in survival mode, but must go beyond survival to emerge better than before. And the keys to that was simply faith. 4 aspects of faith specifically: faith in self, others, country, and God. So with Jerry's experience in mind, we at Beyond Survival feel really impassioned to educate all generations about the extraordinary courage of the American prisoners of war held in North Vietnam, and more importantly, the lessons learned that we can apply in our own lives. We are all POWs, as Jerry said, at one time in our lives, prisoners of woe. Sadly, Jerry filed his last flight plan in November of 2021. And for full disclosure for my listeners, our guest today and my husband Jerry were very close friends. They lived together in a cell for 3 years in Wallow Prison in Hanoi. In fact, Everett, our guest, was the last person other than family to be with Jerry before he died. They were more than friends. They were California boys, specifically Central Valley California boys. Brothers, each never had. But I want to tell you, it's always pretty great, right, to be first in something. But in the case of our next guest, it wasn't such a great honor to be first. It was a horrifying situation, and he was first in that. Now, I know that we know that August 4th in 1964, we were not in a war with North Vietnam. But by August 5th, 1964, flying off the USS Constellation, our guest flew a night mission and didn't return until February 12th, 1973. If you're counting, that's 8.5 years. Shot down, captured, tortured, and imprisoned 4 years. Everett Alvarez, we are so honored to welcome you to Beyond Survival, the podcast.
Well, thank you, Susan. It's a pleasure to be with you.
It's great to be with you. We've spent a lot of time together. In fact, you and your wife Tammy took me on a cruise as a widow. I was the third wheel. Imagine that, going on a beautiful cruise and having a third person with you. But I will always love you for that. So Everett retired from the Navy as a commander in 1980. You earned a Silver Star and many other awards. Now, this is amazing that you were still on active duty, but you got your law degree during that time, flying hops and doing your duty in the Navy. Then later you got out and you were in the Peace Corps, or not weren't in the Peace Corps, but you were deputy administrator of the Peace Corps, or deputy director, I should say, right? And then deputy administrator of the VA. And you now own a defense firm in the D.C. area.
We have a consulting business. At this, which basically my son runs day-to-day operations. But no, I've been involved with the government work for a long time. It's 1987, I believe. Yeah. When I started the business, and basically it was based on the fact that I had a lot of experience with government procurement, government bureaucracy, having first in the while active duty, and then afterwards as a political appointee. So it just was a natural to start a consulting business, dealing strictly with the federal government. And
that may be harder than being a POW in some ways.
Yeah, it can be frustrating at times, but no, I would not compare it with a POW.
But I want to also mention that you were awarded the Congressional Medal of Honor, which
No,
is it
no,
is that what it's called, the
no,
Congressional
no. It's the Congressional Gold Medal
Gold
that
Medal?
that Congress passed. It's like a bill, and it was introduced by a congressman from California, my home where I'm from district, and then the bill has to be passed through the House and then through the Senate. It was almost a year and a half ago, and then the president signed it, so it's an act. And right now, it's the highest a civilian award the Congress can give, and each medal is specifically designed for the recipient. And so my medal is in the process of being made. I don't know quite when it'll be completed. It's in the queue. There's a lot of things in the queue at the U.S. Mint, but that's one of them.
How exciting! And congratulations, Everett.
Well,
What
thank
an
you.
honor. What an honor. So you're like a law now. The Congress passed you. And so the Everett Alvarez law.
Hard to think of me as a law,
A
yeah.
law, yeah. But anyway, I think it's going to be displayed in the Smithsonian Institution,
Well,
maybe as a
it's
lasting
presented.
legacy.
It's presented by the Congress, usually, and I'm not quite sure if it's the Speaker or it's the Congressman that introduced it. I'll have to get briefed on how that works. And it's a 24 karat gold medal, the original. It's 3 inches in diameter. And it's a very valuable piece of, and we just don't feel comfortable having it in the home. And then, so the director, one of the curators at the Smithsonian, Dr. Blakesich, who I know fairly well, has offered to take it and for safekeeping and have it displayed with some other memorabilia that I have from Vietnam days, and so we feel it'll be safe there, and people can view it if they want. And there will be replicas made. I understand that these are brass or replicas that can be purchased for a price through the mint. So.
Well, this is what an amazing honor to have that, and it will be a lasting legacy. And I love the fact that it can be seen by all of Americans and for them to be able to reflect on your courage and your sacrifice.
I think about 190 have been awarded since George Washington. He was the first, and throughout the 250 years, about 190 have been awarded, you know, it's a lot of individuals or groups, like teams, like the Vietnam. They were the helicopter crews. They called them the dust-off crews. As a unit, they were awarded one. In World War II, Merrill's Marauders were awarded one, and the U.S. Olympic hockey team was awarded one for their performance and victory. Gosh, a number of years back.
Well,
But,
Everett, besides George Washington, you're really in good company. And I think I could consider that you were a team also, because your biggest achievement is your marriage for over 50 years to Tammy Elias Alvarez, who is a force of nature. So just saying a shout out to Tammy, that might have been the best thing you ever did, but you might not get an award for it.
I've been awarded every day.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Oh man, you've practiced that. That was good.
I did.
Well, Everett, I know you and Jerry were good friends, and we want to talk about him whenever you can. Just because of course, it means a lot to me. But I think knowing that you men held and locked up and moved frequently and tortured and all the things that happened to you. Many of you were wounded and never recovered from those wounds. but that you were together and you made friends, long-lasting friendships in prison is important. So let's describe a little bit about how you started out. I mean, you're raised in the Central Valley. You know, you're like Jerry. You guys were Central Valley guys, and you were from Salinas, right? And then Jerry was from Modesto, so you connected in that way. But kind of describe your early life there, and then how did you get in the Navy? You graduated from college. What happened?
Well, it was a natural progression, actually. We grew up in Salinas. I was born and raised in, which is about 20 miles from Monterey, on the central coast of California, and my parents were Depression era young couple that the whole country was struggling, and I remember significantly. We grew up in a area just outside of the incorporated city of Salinas. It was an area that we called the Alisal. It was an area that a lot of migrant people that not only of Mexican descent, but there were a lot of people from the Midwest during the Dust Bowl days that migrated out there for work, and we affectionately called each other Okies and Arkies and people like that. So one of my friends described the area as an area that was just a bunch of Mexicans and Okies, and all got along and grew up together. The kids did. So it was a very homogeneous area and population. I went through public schools there. During the World War II, we went to San Francisco. My father learned how to weld and worked in the shipyards. And when it was over, eventually we came back to this town, and I had a good education at that time through the public school system, high school. I attended junior college, community college, they call them nowadays, two-year schools, which were actually stepping stones to the universities. And then I was fortunate enough to get a scholarship to Santa Clara, where I majored in electrical engineering. I like math, and I
So what
liked
were you
the
planning
science
on
course.
doing, Everett? What were you planning on doing with that electrical engineering degree?
Well,
What were your
wanted-
hopes and dreams?
I just wanted to get a college degree. I was the first in my family to finish high school or to go to high school, and of course the first in the family to go to college back in those days. And we were always single and we were facing the draft. The men were. We were all, eligible for the draft, and you had a choice of continuing school or get married or go into the service. And so a logical step for me when I finished college was to go into the military. And I always enjoyed watching the aircraft coming into nearby Moffett Field, the jets coming in and what have you. And I always felt that would be an exciting way to go. And so I applied and passed the test, the entrance exams. So when I graduated from the university,
What university did you go to? Where did you go?
the University of Santa Clara.
Oh, so
which
that's
is-
a great school.
Today, it's a great school. It's a Jesuit university. It's right in the middle of what is now Silicon Valley. In those days, it was all orchards and what have you. So the area's changed tremendously. But I went in and went through flight training, Navy flight training, and found myself assigned to a West Coast squadron when I finished my training, and was on the USS Constellation out in the what is we call the South China Sea. When things started to happen in Vietnam, and we were on station when the Vietnam War started. It was the Tonkin Gulf incident, August of 1964, when North Vietnamese torpedo boats came out of their ports and attacked one of our destroyers, the USS Maddox, beyond the 12-mile limits,
Yeah. They
which
were out in
made it the open seas,
Okay.
right?
Yeah.
And they did it again a couple of nights later, and that's when we retaliated.
Right.
President Johnson sent a bunch in retaliation.
So
And
Everett,
it
I
was-
want to interrupt you. I want to go back to there you
Go ahead.
are again. You had your college degree. You're now a Navy pilot. You're a Lieutenant JG, which is the lowest rank of officer in the Navy. You're what,
No, it's
26?
it's-
It's not. Is there
it's
one further?
Yeah.
What's
correction.
the lesser? Okay,
Yeah,
that's okay.
Correction. The lowest rank in the Navy is as officer is ensign.
Ensign, that's right. Oh, sorry.
It's the
You
same
know,
as ensign is second lieutenant in the other services.
yeah, sorry.
Lieutenant
my-
JG is a first lieutenant.
My
Yeah,
background-
the Navy has to. We're different.
My background is Marine Corps. So, anyway, forgive me on that one. But you
No,
were
no
not
problem.
really way up there in the rank. And how old are you at this point? About
At this,
25?
I was 26 when I was shot down in
Okay.
1964.
And by the way, you didn't mention that before this time you had gotten married.
I was married between the first and second cruise in December of 63, and then we left on our cruise 6 months later, 5 months later, and so yeah, I was fairly newly married when
Yes.
I went off.
I would say so. So you were married 5 months when you went off on the Constellation?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, well, that's quite a short time to be married.
It was, yes.
Yeah, it's. I can only imagine because I was in similar circumstances, but not cruises. But to have your husband go off and you're left alone and you're a Navy wife. But I'm sure she had family there in California to be with, right? So anyway,
Yeah.
I want to recount because I read in your book. By the way, Everett has a fabulous book. It is called Chained Eagle. You have to get it and read it. He co-wrote it with a man named Anthony Pitch, but honestly, it's one of the best written about an experience. In fact, it's unmatched because Everett was there so much longer than anyone else was, and how you navigate and cope with being alone so much before even another American was shot down. But I'm reading in your book, reading just the account of the night that you left on those orders or your mission. Can you relate that night because you were watching a movie and it was bad weather? So kind of repaint that picture.
Well, one of the pastimes that we did aboard ship when we were not flying, working, was to watch the movies, which usually was after the dinner. And we would, when we weren't flying, we'd go down to one of the ready rooms and watch the local flick. And I remember sitting there. I had just grabbed a bag of popcorn. I was starting to watch this movie when I got a call, and it was our squadron operations officer, Lieutenant Commander Nicholson, and we called him Nick. And they used to call me Alvy in the squadron. That was like a name. It was
Like a
familiar
call
name.
sign, sort of.
Sort of, but so he called and said, let's come on down to the ready room. We have to go on a mission. So we went down and we were informed that there was activity in the Gulf, and that was what was happening. Was that what I just related to you, that the torpedo boats were actively going out after our USS destroyer, and by this time it had been joined by another destroyer, the USS Turner Joy. And so there were two destroyers, American destroyers, out there, and apparently they felt they were going to be harassed again by the North Vietnamese torpedo boats. So we got ready. There were three of us, and we manned airplanes in case we had to go to their assistance of the destroyers. And like many times before, when things had come up, we were sitting off the coast of Vietnam in those days at the early days of the conflict there, and we would sit manned airplanes, and then they would call them off. So I figured, oh boy, they're not going to launch us off here at 10 o'clock at night or 10:30. And so I
Plus,
manned
it was
airplane.
raining. It was raining, and it was moving.
It was bad, lousy weather, rainy, dark, no moon. And next thing I know, they announced to start engines, and so we started up. I started up, and we launched. And the first three of us that flew over.
So, what was your mission? Right
At this
across
point, it was just to go to the aid to see what we can do to help.
So you were to fly over these two destroyers, or just fly around in that area, but not not over land, not over North Vietnam.
No, they were out in the middle of the Tonkin Gulf.
But you weren't
And
to go
so,
over land.
and so when we got near to where the destroyers were, flying about 35,000 feet, we were in the top. We were above these thunder clouds. It was just massive thunder clouds, and there was a lot of chaos on the radio. There were a couple of airplanes from the USS Ticonderoga that were flying over the ships trying to help, and we radioed in that we were up at altitude radio if they needed us, and we were armed with the rockets, but I had flares because we had practiced before, as part of our missions was being able to fly it and drop ordnance at night. And so there was a lot of chaos going on there, and so one of the airplanes that sort of took control and coordinating the activities between the planes and the ships. And the ships were, by this time, totally, it was a chaotic situation. The one ship would call out torpedo bearings, and it was all sonar bearings, and they would be turning and apparently firing at torpedoes or something out in the water. So one of the planes asked if anybody had flares, and I happened to be carrying the flares, so I detached from our flight. What came down through the thunderstorms, dark, and actually broke out about 1,200 feet above the water. That was the base of the clouds. I was able to locate the ships, and I dropped the flares. I had 6 of them, and they basically lit up the whole sky around the area, and I could see the 2 destroyers bobbing and weaving down below, but I couldn't see anything else. Around the periphery of the lit up area, and so, but at that time, I had completed what I could do, and then I detached and came back up, and I had, by this time we were low on fuel, so I detached from that and started back up through the thunderstorms, and broke out about 40,000 feet. Flew back to the ship, and turns out had about I had enough fuel to make one and possibly two passes. So, fortunately, we were well trained. I was well trained, and I had a lot of night hours, nighttime flying off the ships, and so I made it aboard, and then when the other planes followed, and we came. We had to come up to the spaces to brief the admiral.
Wait a minute.
What was happening?
What
Go
night
ahead.
was this? I'm sorry. Was this the 5th of August, or was this the 4th of August?
4th of August.
Okay, so this is the day before, or the night before, rather, that you were shot down. The night.
Oh,
before.
yeah, I thought you wanted me to, yeah.
No, I did want you to. I wanted.
So
you to
anyway,
do
when we went up, and the people that had been flying in the air all mustered, the admiral wanted, details of what happened, and we told him we didn't see anything. We just saw our two destroyers, but we really couldn't see anything else. He seemed to be somewhat frustrated by that, and then he says, "Well, okay, boys, you did a good job." We left. I went to bed. And then the next thing I know, I was, the phone in my stateroom was rang, and it was about 10 o'clock, and it was a duty officer who just said, "Ev, you got to come down, and you got to come and get suited up. You're going to fly a mission." And so I did, and got suited up, and we were in the space planning. We were in the air intelligence space on the ship, which was just a planning area. And basically, midway through our planning, we were looking at our assigned target, which was the Hangei port, a naval base up north of Haiphong Harbor, between that and the China border. When the air group commander walked in and said, "This is a confirmed go on our mission," that President Johnson just got on the air and told the American public that we were bombing North Vietnam. This was about 11 o'clock on the ship in the morning, which 12 hours difference was 11 p.m. at night here in Washington, D.C. Mm-hmm. So I found out later that President Johnson wanted to get on the air and let the American public know this before they went to bed. And so and we were still planning our mission for a 2 p.m. or 1400 launch from the ship. So we did that, and so we gave them about 3 hours notice. But there were planes from the other that were striking the southern part of the north of Vietnam, down near the 17th parallel.
I'm going to interrupt you right here, just for my edification and maybe our listeners. So now you've gone from just observing out here and just sort of supporting other ships, the destroyers, etc., and you're flying around, but you're not really in a combat situation. You're not at war. We're not at war till suddenly we are at war, according to the announcement that was given, or orders that were given to you guys. And suddenly now you are sort of the tip of the spear at the beginning of what we all know as was the Vietnam War.
Exactly.
So you basically started the war.
I started.
That's what I'd like to say.
I used to go around saying that I started the war. But basically, before this point, we were assisting the South Vietnamese military. We had special forces in South Vietnam. We were flying missions over Laos, the Ho Chi Minh Trail, photo reconnaissance missions, and then we had armed escorts for the photo planes. So we were doing stuff like that. Uh-huh. But it wasn't a direct involvement from the air. And the advisors that we had with the military, the South Vietnamese military, were actually getting involved themselves. So this was the beginning stages. That whole incident became known as the Tonkin Gulf incident that I described August the 4th. And in retaliation the next day for the torpedo boat aggressive actions towards the our U.S. destroyers, we launched a bunch of planes to hit our targets. And like I said, I didn't launch our flight until 1400 or 2 p.m.
Yeah.
2 hours to get to our targets, 4 p.m. So they were ready for us.
So when you say they were ready for us, you had SAM missiles, SAMs down there, and they were ready for action. The North Vietnamese were.
In those days, it was early. That was before the introduction of SAMs in North Vietnam.
Okay.
It was actually, we really didn't know much, didn't have much intelligence on their defenses. We knew that they had naval facilities up and down the coast, so we sort of had. It was sort of a launch and go see what you find up there. There was no real briefing on any defenses that they had. And so we didn't know until we launched. We went up to our targets and flew, and it was a beautiful, clear day. We descended. We were not trying to evade their radar or anything, just went straight in. And I was flying wing on the squadron executive officer. Other planes sort of trailed behind, and we went in first. And when we did, the whole world opened up on us. The sky turned black. They had a lot of anti-aircraft around the torpedo base, and went in there. And that's when I got hit. I was coming off the target, and I was joining up with my lead again, who had not fired his weaponry. And after the others came in, and others in our squadron went in, came and fired all of their rockets that we were carrying at the torpedo boats.
So Everett, because I want to make sure we get to everything, because this is so fascinating. Sure. So I want to make so at that point, you've got a hit. You're in your plane by yourself. The A4, you're flying an A4 Skyhawk.
Right.
Is that right?
That's
and
correct.
It's just a single seater. So you're there, and you've been hit, and at that moment, you announce that I've been hit. What were the words you used?
Well, the plane started when I got hit. My plane started to disintegrate, and I could feel that the wing gradually was. Every warning system that I had came on. I was losing my hydraulic. I had electrical failure. I had fire. My engine I could rumbling start coming apart, wow. And I knew I wasn't going to go very far. I had to get out, and so I radioed and to the others, and I announced them I'd been hit and that I was going to be. I was on fire, and then. Our ops officer, Nick, that I mentioned earlier, came on the radio and said, you know what to do, Alvy? And so I said, right, I'm getting out. I'll see you guys later. I managed to pull the ejection curtain, and it was reached up over my head and got the handles and pulled down over it, which pops the canopy and fires the ejection seat. Very low altitude, the plane was coming apart. I was trying to keep it so I would go up, but instead I went sideways. And I was very fortunate that my trajectory took me over a cliff and into the water below. And the parachute popped open just before I hit the water. So I had a very narrow window here. If I had 1 or 2 seconds before, I would not have cleared the cliff. I would have hit the ground, and if I'd waited longer, I wouldn't have been able to have my parachute open. And so, somebody was watching over me.
That's what I was going to say. I read at some point in time, you had a lot of time to think about that and
I
how
sure
close you came to dying, and God had His hand on your shoulder for sure during that moment.
And we go, all of us Navy pilots used to go through what they call SEER school, survival school, and it's survival, escape, resistance, and survival, evasion, resistance, escape, which is the recent. It's been explained more in the media recently because of the rescue that they had in the aircrew in Iran. But so the first thing is to survive, and I managed to survive. Found myself in the water. Next thing was try to evade, but I was in the water and I was surrounded by Vietnamese fishing boats, and so didn't have much luck in trying to evade from that. They picked me up. They were armed, heavily armed, and then soon turned me over to the Navy. A patrol boat came, one of the boats that we had attacked their bases, and I was transferred from all tied up like a top and stripped of a lot of clothing and stuff, and they transferred me over to the patrol boat.
So Everett, were you injured at all from your ejection seat? I mean, usually in an A4, it's such a tiny cockpit that people complain about getting injured just from the ejection.
They do, and there's a lot. And we had what they call compression fracture. It was very common. I had that on my upper spine, which is something that, it just takes a while to get over it. And another just from the shock of hitting ejection into the airstream at a very, very fast speed, and it just had a lot of aches and pains from on my arms and my legs from the shock of hitting it. But no, other than that, I was very, very lucky.
So now at this point, you're not in control. You're now being taken to you don't know where for sure. Are you going through your checklist from SEER school? What are they going to do with me now? What am I to do now? How do I resist? I can't evade.
Can't evade. They had me, and the interesting part was that at first they didn't quite know what I was, what my nationality was, or what country, or what I came from. The local people, the military guys, they got me there, and then it took them a while. It took me a while to figure out that I was an American, and when they realized that I was an American, they had taken my military ID, my dog tags, and they saw that, and they figured it out, and I could tell that they were confused. They were, looking around the sky, seeing there were more. They seemed to be in deep thought, and then they brought a English-speaking translator in. When they brought me to this port, and I was being first captured, it seems like they just didn't know what to do with me. And then they put me took me to a local jail. After a while, and I was put into a cell with other prisoners.
So that's the first I've heard of that. I've forgotten about that.
They did, but by this time the shock had worn off, and I was so tired. I just kept falling asleep. So when I got into the cell, I just sort of I laid down and I was out like a light. And when I woke up middle of the night, I was in leg irons, and I had a mosquito net. The prisoners had put a mosquito net over me, and I looked around, and then I just fell back. I didn't wake up until when I did. It was like the next day, middle of the day, and they were feeding the prisoners, and it was some kind of a gruel, and they had a plate for me, and I just looked at the plate. I just fell back to sleep again. And then they woke me again, took me to interrogation. There were two officers, one naval officer and one Army officer. They spoke English, and they wanted to know why I had bombed their base. I said, I said name, rank, service number, date of birth, and according to the Geneva agreements, and they bluntly told me, and there was no war, so the Geneva agreements did not apply to me. I was not a POW. I was a criminal, and I was going to be tried by a tribunal and probably executed. And so, I realized, there was no declaration of war.
Yeah.
And so, but name, rank, service number was all I was going to give them.
Yeah, that was a code of conduct too.
That was
right?
a code of conduct
Yeah.
that we were trained to follow.
Mm-hmm. So Everett, let me just because I want to move
Go ahead.
along a little. I don't. Everything you say is fascinating. I just want to keep going here because I know that you were interrogated when you finally got. How long? Well, first of all, how long did it take you to get to Wallow Prison, the famous Hanoi Hills?
I was. It took me about a week.
Okay.
From the time I was shot down. I spent that first night, like I said, in a local prison. Then they moved me to a farmhouse under guard. And it was there. About 2 days later, they had a doctor come and look at me and to see if I was okay. And then there was a visit by I was told was a high-ranking officer. And it was so I was taken to a room at this farmhouse, and as I was led in there, I saw this older man, in military uniform, high rank, and he was allegedly the high-ranking officer, and he had an interrogator, a translator with him. And the man saw me come in. I sat down on a stool, and he looked at me, and then he said something in Vietnamese, and then he stared out the window in deep thought. And the translator said, he says that, he said, my superior officer says that you are very, very young. And the officer of all this time was looking out, staring in deep thought. In retrospect, I was very young looking. I mean, I used to get asked for an ID whenever I'd go into a bar. I was 26, but I used to get asked for an ID all the time, and so at that point they took me back to my room, and then about a few days later, after that, a couple of days later, the interrogator walks in, and he says, you try to just say name, rank, service number, date of birth, and if you're hungry or if you're sick. He said, but we know all about you. And he reached into his pouch and he started pulling out the copies of the magazines, Time, Newsweek, U.S. News and World Report, picked newspapers, the San Francisco Chronicle, San Jose Mercury News, the Washington Post, New York Times, on and on. all about me cover splashed all over all of these, my pictures, my family, bios, my people on the ship, and what have you.
Well, oh
And
my gosh. Well, at least you know that your fate was out into the public, and so your family
that's
could
correct.
know, and
Well,
at
yeah.
least that. But what else were you thinking at that
Well,
moment?
they didn't know if I was alive or dead, as it turns out. They just had my pictures, and I was one of the guys shot down. So the Vietnamese knew all about me. And I was thinking at that time, I was thinking, there's no declaration of war. There's, and so name, rank, service number, and date of birth, not going to hack it. And so and then they loaded me on into a Jeep, and we made the drive from that farmhouse to Hanoi. And of course, I was handcuffed, blindfolded, and the Jeep that I was in, the truck that I was in, I was covered up, and so I couldn't see out, and they didn't want me to know where I was going, but I could peek up. I could peek out, and under my blindfold, I could see every once in a while things. And eventually, we came to we were on a bridge, and I peeked out, and I saw the sign Hanoi, and so the next thing we know, we're in the prison, and I'm taken and put into one of our room that I was there for almost 6 months. Well, about
Okay,
5
so
months.
you call it a room.
Yeah,
And
it
was it a big room, or was it a
it was
cell-like thing?
no, it was a
No,
big room, about a 9 by 12 size room, 10 by 12. It had
It's big.
a front, coming into the like a cell, and then a door going out the back to a little courtyard where there was a wash basin, a water. You could add water, and then there was a commode, a water closet where you could use that. And when I was out, I could use that outside, but most of the time I was locked up inside the room, and I was introduced to the bucket, which is what I use for my restroom, and then there was a cot. I was a little wooden
That's a nice way to
platform, a
put it.
little wooden on sawhorses, which was with a frame around it for a mosquito net, and a table with a chair, two chairs, and a small table, and that was it.
Everett, we don't have a whole
For
lot of time in this
Sure.
segment. We're
Go
going to
ahead.
bring you back for another hour, but we're almost done. I can't believe it's been an hour. It's been fascinating. But in that cell, I want to work our way back to faith and what faith
Sure.
and how you were able to call on your faith. You were Catholic, right? And how to call on your faith. And I remember in your book, you talk about an altar that you put together. Would you describe that and talk about the faith and how you came to realizing that was going to be the biggest part of your survival?
Well, like I started when I first shot down, I was I realized that after that I had it was a miracle that I made it, that I survived the ejection and I was in the water, and before that I had lived through that, and I was not knowing what was going to happen to me, and I'll admit I was afraid, and when we got to Hanoi. Before they started the long interrogation that I will, next time I'll tell you about it. But it was I was there for several weeks. The food made me ill. I was sick, and I just alone in this place. And it was sort of like me against the Vietnamese. There was nobody around that I could turn for help. But then there was. And I was spiritual. I used to attend mass and do I would go to on my own, made a habit of doing that before. And so I started talking to the person upstairs. I just very quickly, a couple of years ago, my grandson, I was invited to speak to his school, and it's a Catholic school here in Bethesda, Maryland, and I was. And they let my grandson, younger, attend my lecture because it was only for the higher 7th and 8th grades, and then he came in. He was like the 3rd grade, and so I did speak to them, and I told them about my experience and what have you, and how faith impacted me. So Caleb, my grandson, after that went home, and so his mother says, "Well, how was Grandpa? How was this? What did he have to say?" And he says, "Oh," Caleb says, he talked about how he had a friend in prison, and he used to talk to him, and that was all he told his mother, and that's what he got out of it. But I did. I realized that I was alone, but I was not alone, and I had a friend, and it was God, and I used to talk to him every day, and so when I had a chance, I started to I found a little like a rusty nail or something in the courtyard out there, because this had a lot of barbed wire around it and broken glass on top of the walls, and like a regular old prison. And I got this little nail, and I started above the water. The sink that was outside, I would stand on this, and I started to etch on the wall. First, I was a cross, and then I would got into the habit of saying portions of the service, and in the mass and the liturgy, and I would recall. I had been an altar boy when I was young. And so I tried to recall some of the Latin phrases, and I started, and then I started a calendar alongside of it, the days, significant days that I'd been there. And the first one was, I think, Labor Day, and then the next one was, Thanksgiving, and then Christmas, and my birthday, and then I etched out to help me in my saying the portions of the Mass. I would scratch out these words: "Lord, I am not worthy, but only say the word, and my soul shall be healed." And I recall that phrase, and then others in Latin. And I made progress on this thing there, and so it was. Pretty well. And then the turnkey, the jailer, one day came out and looked around, and he found it, and he reported it. And the interrogators came and said, "You cannot deface the property." And I was always getting in trouble with the guards because I was doing things and I wasn't supposed to do. But I lost a lot of weight the first times, first couple, and then 6 weeks after I was taken to Hanoi, they took me to. They started a 6-week solid interrogation with people, and I didn't, in hindsight, they didn't know what to do with me, and so I think the policy was. That they were going to not do anything physical, but they had asked me what I knew about Vietnam, and I didn't know anything. So there was a process to educate me about Vietnam, and at the same time to interrogate me and they wanted to basically know everything that I knew.
Yeah.
The first phase of my captivity.
Yeah. The first phase and the beginning of probably the growth, would you say, and your faith along the way, and relying on God, and then again we can add in as Jerry later created the formula of faith in himself, because
Sure.
you learned there. I'm sure we can describe that later. We'll go over that in the beginning of our next episode with you. How faith in general, not just in God, but also self, others, and country, played such a role.
It was an application of my faith. I always had a lot of faith, and I used to, I practiced a lot of it while I was in college and in the military and so forth. So it was something that I had, I didn't find it. I just sort of it was just renewed, and I realized this is what I had to. It was just the two of us, God and myself.
Oh, Everett,
of course,
that's
the family.
Yeah, that's a
the
beautiful
family was there,
way.
and the country was there, and all that. But
That's your next book. That's your next book. God and myself.
God and myself. That's
God
good.
and myself. That's your next book. Well, Everett, listen. This is. I just feel like we are learning so much about certain things. I don't even think some of this you included in your book, but it's certainly good to go and read your book because you do give a lot of detail into this. But hearing it from you and hearing how you felt during those moments, realizing at some point that it was only you, and nobody was coming to get you, not like they did in Iran. We didn't have those kinds of rescue operators in those
we had
days.
nothing. We
And
had
so, you were there alone, and we're going to end it here, but we're going to come back next week and talk about much of the time you spent in prison, what you did, how you filled your days and hours of loneliness and solitude, and we're going to also talk about when you very first discovered there were others in the prison. And my big question, this is a question for next week. Why didn't the Vietnamese, why didn't the communists let you mix with them? And let's ponder on that and figure out why they kept you in solitary for so long when others were already there and in cells with each other. So, Everett Alvarez, you are my hero. You are the hero for our country. You really are a humble man. I've known you for a long time, and I know that humility is first and foremost with you. It's not as easy to talk about yourself. But we want you to, because it's for the legacy for our country, not just for you, but for our country. This history needs to be told. So we thank you so much. I love you, Everett. You're my dear friend, and we will meet again in about a week. Thank you again.
Great.
I would like to ask our listeners, to keep our wonderful fighting warriors who fly in the sky and rescue on land in your prayers and in your hearts. God bless you, and God bless America.
Thank you, Susan.
For more information about the Beyond Survival podcast, go to goingbeyondsurvival.org.